Hello everyone, welcome to Bald Guy Money. I am Bald Guy, and there have been some sensational stories going around over the past few weeks about the supply of gold and silver potentially being exhausted by different sources. Starting with this story, which has been making the rounds over the past few days regarding massive purchases of silver by Indians driven by the exploitation of a tax loophole that has allowed private dealers in the world's largest silver consuming market to sell silver at a 2% discount. And when it comes to gold, we are also hearing rumors of pressure on supply, which has resulted in an incredible run-up in the price of gold to record nominal levels, and it's even put us in the neighborhood of inflation-adjusted all-time highs. All of which has been driven and continues to be fueled by central banks stacking gold, which as a percentage of total gold demand has risen dramatically since the third quarter of 2022, as indicated by the red color on the bars shown on this table right here on the screen, as they hedge their balance sheets against fears that the United States dollar is being mismanaged, which we can clearly see in the fact that the share of US dollar reserves versus all other currencies has decreased over the past 2 decades from being above 70% of currency reserves in the second quarter of 2000 to now being below 60% according to data from the second quarter of last year. And as a side note, I just want to say that it's worth mentioning the shares of US dollars held in reserve officially dropped below 60% in Q3 2022 at the precise moment when global central banks intensified their gold purchases. And I'm guessing that is not a coincidence. So, considering a potential supply crunch, I want to explore some very important numbers with you all in this video, starting with the real gold to silver ratio. I will also give some comments on why this doesn't match the ratio in price. Then I want to talk about how much gold and silver exists per person on Earth today. And this is to give you all an idea of exactly how scarce gold and silver are. And before we get to this video's viewer question, I will share my thoughts on how much gold and silver I think each one of us needs to be adequately protected in 2024. And this will be a weight-based number, not a percentage of net worth, so be sure to watch that bit. Now, just before we get into it, if you're in the United States and want to buy gold and silver from a reputable dealer at a great price, please check out channel partner Pimbex, who has these Silver Buffalo rounds for sale on their website right now for as low as $26.79 per piece. Because with silver prices on the move and interest in silver growing again, silver rounds are going to be a great economic option for many of you out there, and I will leave the link to this deal in the video description below. And for those of you interested in gold or silver IRAs, don't forget that you can reach Pimbex at the number on the screen for a free IRA consultation. Just please remember to tell them you came from the Bald Guy Money channel. So, as it stands today, there are many ways to look at the silver to gold ratio. According to geologists, the ratio of silver to gold in the earth overall is a little less than 19 ounces of silver for every 1 ounce of gold. But because we as humans value gold much more than silver, at least right now at the moment we do, we pull more gold out of the ground compared to the ratio of how much exists in the Earth's crust, with only about 8 ounces of silver mined for every 1 ounce of gold. And this makes sense considering how much more profitable it is to mine gold versus silver. And when it comes to how we value it in US dollar terms, although it may not be the perfect way to measure it, but it is still the best way considering the fact that fiat currency is the leading medium of exchange for goods and services in the world today, the market currently states that 86 ounces of silver is the same value as 1 ounce of gold. So, you can see some major disparities there in how we value gold and silver versus how much is mined and how much actually exists in the Earth's crust. And my stance on this is simple. Although I think silver is undervalued versus gold, and that we will likely return to a ratio that ranges from an optimistic 40 to 1 to a more realistic 60 to 1 ratio, I also think the free market is the best way to determine the value as opposed to looking at historically imposed ratios. And here I'm referring to maybe ratios from the Roman times, 10 to 1, 12 to 1, or maybe even more recent, some of the US based ratios, 20 to 1, even 15 to 1. Because from my point of view, the market clearly values gold more than silver, and I believe an element of that is built upon the fact that gold doesn't tarnish or corrode, and it's a more compressed, more concentrated way to store value as opposed to silver, which does tarnish, it does corrode, and of course, considering the current gold to silver ratio with respect to the US dollar, of course, silver isn't as concentrated a form of value as gold, which means that it's more difficult to store and more difficult to transport. That said, I always stress the importance of stacking both metals. I like to think of them, metals that is, as a kind of a life raft, where gold is the physical raft and silver is the motor that propels that raft. Now, moving on to the next point of how much gold and silver exists per person in the world today, we have to determine first how much gold and silver has been mined throughout history. And this number will slightly differ from my top owners videos in that in this video, I am including absolutely everything in existence, meaning gold held by central banks, silver held by private banks like JP Morgan. I'm including in this calculation, I'm including jewelry, I'm including circuitry, I'm including gold dental implants, I'm including even treasure lost at sea, I'm including absolutely everything that exists above ground today. And my sources, as always, are in the video description. And my source on this particular bit of information is the Royal Mint. And you can find the source in the video description, as I've just said. And the Royal Mint on this topic states that throughout history, existing still today, we have nearly 25 billion troy ounces of silver and nearly 10 billion troy ounces of gold. And I am sure that my silver bulls watching this video will have already noticed that these numbers mean there are only 2.5 ounces of silver in existence for every 1 ounce of gold today. And that's according to the Royal Mint, so this is a very reliable source of information. Now, those numbers may seem huge. Some of you might be saying, so gold and silver aren't that rare after all. But to those of you who are saying that, I say you're wrong. Because as it stands today, there are nearly 8.1 billion people on Earth, and that is a number that is growing every single day. And you can see, just to the right of that figure, a list of the top 20 countries in order based on total population, in case you were curious about just how that breaks down amongst the top nations of the world. So, when we divide the amount of metals in existence by the total population of the world, including every man, woman, and child that walks this planet, you can see if we spread all the silver and gold in existence equally amongst everyone, there are only 3.1 ounces of silver per person and 1.2 ounces of gold per person. And these numbers here highlight exactly how rare these metals are and really exposes the fact that you don't need a lot of gold or silver to have what would be considered a fair share of the metal divided equally amongst the entire world population. In fact, in US dollar terms, to buy this much metal, meaning the silver plus the gold, it would cost you about $2,740 US dollars today. And I understand that might be a large amount of money for some of the viewers out there, especially some of my younger viewers, but considering how much gold and silver are out of circulation, out of these billions of ounces that are in existence, and I'm talking here about gold that's sitting in central bank vaults that's not going to be recirculated into the world population. I'm talking here about silver that's laying in landfills and old electronics that might never be recycled. Having just this small amount of each metal is a great starting point to say, I don't trust the people who manage the fiat money system. They print money which steals the value of my labor. I want to protect the value of that labor in something you cannot print. I am going to start buying some gold and some silver. Let me get my fair share and pick up 3 ounces of silver and 1 ounce of gold. I think that's a fantastic way to look at it and a great mentality to have. And maybe it will take you a long time to get there. Maybe you will need to spread that over a year or even 2 years, starting with buying some silver and then moving to fractional gold pieces. But however you do it, if I were you, I'd just do it. That's not advice, of course. I'm not offering any financial advice here. It's just an opinion from someone who has made a lot of money, guys. I've made a lot of money over the years, and I have done a fantastic job of protecting and growing that money into a considerable amount of wealth over the years. And that is why I started the channel, to spread this message and to share that experience with you all out there. And again, I think this is a fantastic starting point. Now, before I move on to the viewer question for this video, I said I would share some figures on how much gold and silver I think each person should aspire to accumulate. And this number doesn't mean that once you get there, you stop. I have more than this, than what's shown here on the screen, but a few years ago, I did a video on how much you would need as a base to start over again. Whether it's in a new country, a new financial system, or just to protect yourself against job loss, which unfortunately a lot of people are experiencing that right now. And in that video, I said, and by the way, this number is still valid today, try to get 5 ounces of gold and 200 ounces of silver. Even if it takes you 10 years to get there, and even better if you can do it right now. Because if you can get there, and remember, this shouldn't come at the expense of paying bills, and it should not be purchased on credit, so please keep that in the back of your mind as I'm talking about these numbers. But if you can get there, you will be ready for most anything life can throw at you, at least when it comes to financial stability. So with that covered, it's now time to move on to my viewer question for this video. And please remember, I answer one viewer question in every video I do, and you can submit your questions in the comments section of any Bald Guy Money video you watch, including this one or any other video in my past catalog. I see the comments as they come, I read every single comment I get, and I usually respond to all of the comments. So, this week's question comes from a viewer named Blake Willison, who asked me in the comments section of my last video, are central banks buying silver at the same rate or pace as they're buying gold? And if not, could this affect the price of silver? If they start to buy it up, can you notify us in your updates, please? So, to start, I do believe that some YouTubers out there are giving people the false impression that central banks are buying silver much in the same way that they're buying gold, which is false. The fact is that central banks are not buying silver. In fact, most central banks have a zero or near zero position on silver today, and this is reflected in the numbers from the Silver Institute. They're right here on the screen, which clearly show there are no positions for silver buying by central banks. And this is in direct contrast to the World Gold Council, which is able to illustrate that the opposite is true for gold, in that central banks are buying gold, and they're buying more now than they ever have before. And I wanted to address this question right here on my channel because it's important that everyone out there understands that. But, of course, Blake, if anything changes, I will update you and everybody who watches this channel right here in a future video, if it happens. I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility that central banks would start stacking silver again. I just don't think it's very likely. And, again, it's not a part of my thesis on why I think it's important to own silver and why I stack silver myself. That would be more associated with the industrial demand as well as the devaluation of the fiat currencies that we're all using on a day-to-day basis. So Blake, thank you very much for that question, and I hope that I was able to adequately answer it. Now, to all of my viewers out there, If you liked this video and you're interested in seeing me do the exact same exercise for Bitcoin, I will be doing that on my Patreon in the coming weeks, along with some gold and silver content. It really doesn't cost much to join the Patreon. It's only $9.99 a month, and if you join for the whole year, there's a discount for that. And you get a weekly newsletter with that. You get price alerts on when I'm buying gold and silver, which I know many patrons out there have saved a significant amount of money by following me on those price alerts. You also get bonus video content, and you get access to all of my stacking tools. So please consider supporting me there. And if you liked this video, please leave a like and leave a comment. Let me know what you thought about this video and if you want me to do more like it. And until the next time we see each other, everybody, as I always end my videos here on YouTube, take care of yourselves and take care of each other. Goodbye.